it. Just such hard workers. I have to say, it gives a lot of credit to the parents when you see kids just do that. In fact, Tuesday, I don't think one time I said, hey guys, this needs done. Hey, go over here and do this. Or hey, get up and get to work. I never had to say any of that. They just did it. And they are such just a wonderful, wonderful example to watch in surfing. It was awesome. So at young ages, they've already learned that, not just hard work, but let's serve, let's get to this, let's take care of us, let's help her out. And they were excited to do that. So I'll let you start since you're sitting next to me if you want to start to share. Do you want to do that? Or are we letting Donnie go first so that when Donnie tells all the bad jokes about us, we can be on the offense then, or defense when it comes back to us? Is that what we were going to do?
Well, you know I wouldn't make up a story or anything like that.
No.
None of us do.
I mean, it's, you know, everything I say is on the level. But I got there on Wednesday, and about 9 o'clock in the morning, I was working with the rest of the guys, and Jerry disappeared. I couldn't figure out where he was. And then later on, Trisha would disappear. And the following day, I asked Blake, do you know where they are? Go look for them. So he went for a walk and looked for them there where we were working. Here they were, a couple of houses up, sitting on the deck partying with the neighborhood. But overall, it was a very good experience.
She made me go.
Well, you went first. So anyhow, I mean, it was a great experience, and the biggest satisfaction was, other than seeing these guys work and so on, but also the satisfaction of the landowner, what they would tell you at the end of the day or the end of the project and so on. It was very rewarding.
Just pass it down the line. Noah, you want to go next?
You lucked out.
Some of the things I did was weed eat and trim trees. That was most of the things I did. And then one of the funniest parts was when Ty fell out of the chair and thought it was Jerry. And then for God sighting, it was seeing the effect when you help, how happy it makes the other people.
All right.
Thank.
So
The academy.
most of the stuff I worked on fell under the category of landscaping, whether it was mowing the lawn, weed whacking, or trimming bushes. I saw God in how the homeowners were thankful for us and showed their appreciation by giving us ice pops on Friday. What was funny was we were walking out of the church where we were stationed at to where we would go out to our jobs, and Trish was shuttling some other people to their job site, and me and Ty were walking out beside Donnie. And Donnie, he yelled over to him, "I call middle." So me and Ty, we kind of ducked our heads and walked a little faster over to the car.
They were 3 young girls who rode with me. That wasn't and then the jokes didn't stop all day long. Donnie was trying to hook them up with these girls who were working just a couple houses down the road from us, huh? All day long. The boys were smarter than that though, right? Yeah.
So I painted decks, I painted 3 porches. Carter, Noah, and I teamed up to mow and weed whack Shawnee's yard. And Noah and I mulched part of her flower bed while Carter and Blake mulched the other half. They were thankful, so in return they gave us a $50 gift card to DQ. And my favorite part was when Trish was telling a story about it was her one friend making fun of her on the bus. Yeah, and he'd always call her Trish the fish, but his name was Shad. So yeah, and then they ended up what? Weren't you guys dating a little bit after that?
My 10th and 11th grade year.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so what I did there was mulching, like Ty said. I did some mowing, trimmed the neighbor's tree because he saw that we were there serving his neighbor, so he asked us to cut a couple limbs down here. It was half the tree, but yeah, and then every day that we'd go over there, she'd always have something to do, so she was running back and forth from her house. And every time she'd come back, she'd always be like, "Oh my goodness, I'd barely even recognize it. Doesn't even look the same." And then she told Carter and I to come back, and she'd pay us for everything that she'd have us do afterwards, after the servants thing. But the funniest part was there was a basketball court. We were right down at the end of like the alleyway, and there was a basketball court. Every 30 minutes, you'd hear the basketball starting to get bounced around, shot at the court. And Donnie ended up tying Carter in a couple games, and Carter's no good at pig.
I think, here, you can pass that back down, Jerry, meanwhile. How was it that John said, boys, at the end of the week, Ty was the, what champion? 8-time pig champion. Noah, what were you? The dunk champion. And Carter was the wounded wanderer. He was the only one, as they were on pavement, there was loose pebbles and stone. And I was watching them Friday afternoon play, because we had a much more relaxed afternoon that day. And so I was just sitting watching them and waiting for somebody to take that stumble. And sure enough, it was Carter. So he walked away with Band-Aids on his elbow and his knee, but that was the worst it was. So, Jerry, you got some things to share?
We'll try to make this relatively short, but we'll see.
That's why we give you the microphone
I got a mic,
last.
so it, We first got there, the first major task they had was in the corner of the property, right next to the house, was this 10, 12-foot ornamental pine of some sort. I don't know what it was, and they said we were supposed to remove that. However, all they had was a Sawzall, anything else we can come up with or whatever. So we were trying to look for a beaver that we could bring in and train quick, but that didn't work out. But fortunately, I had a folding saw that I put in the car for whatever reason, and we took that, and Blake made short work of that tree. I said, you probably use these whenever you get Christmas trees. They cut it, you give them to people to cut down. No, we use better stuff than this. But after it was down, then there was a stump. And she was talking about mulching and different things there. And I thought, well, it's going to be tough to mulch around or whatever. So they went on to their various tasks. So I grabbed the shovel and started messing around with the thing to try to see if I could dig around it. But there was dead pine needles and roots, just massive small roots all over the top because it was mulched and they just grew in there. So I was working away with that. And after a while, I had a whole flock of people around me wanting to get involved. So we got my saw out again and started cutting a root that was in the back corner. And I don't know, 15 of us, I think, got on that thing and finally got through. And it just rolled over. There's not a root under it. There was not a root under it. But we made short work of that and got rid of it. But one of the main things that I had as my task, and you'll see this throughout, talked with the homeowner, and she said, I have 2 lights in here, one for the front and one for the side. I'd like to see those put up. Is that something you think you can do? Well, we're not supposed to agree to anything unless we check with it to make sure there's not some liability or this or that or whatever. So I said something to John. He said, yeah, that's fine. So I told her, we do that. Well, they were working on the front porch. They were painting that. So I went to the side deck, and I went up and I put that on. That was a little bit of a challenge, but put it on. And then the next day, I went to do the one in the front, and that was a real challenge. The light is recessed back in, and the thing she got was a flat plate that had to fit out on the outside. So in order to get the receptacle and everything, had to be bolts and things in there. So I played around with it, and I decided that was it. There were some pieces from the one I took down. I'll bring them back tomorrow. I didn't throw it out. I took it home, but I'll bring them back tomorrow. So that's what I decided to do, to leave it go. Well, in the meantime, I was wandering around, and I saw Ty painting. I think he painted every one of the decks. I don't think there was one he didn't have his hand on. And he was not smiling and enjoying it or whatever, but he was doing his thing and so on. Every time I'd see him, he was doing something else or whatever. But when he got to the back deck, the trio, Trish and Ty and Donnie, spread across and one third the ball and brought it towards the steps. And after a while, he comes around the corner, he says, "I quit." And I said, "What do you mean you quit?" And I said, "You just got pushed out, right? There's no way three of you can be on those steps." He said, "Well, I quit anyway." But then I got back there, and when Donnie was finishing up the steps, there was a final step there, and he gave the brush to Ty. And I don't know how many tips he may have given him as he was going through. He may be your painter if you need some painting done at home. But I saw him, here, turn the brush this way and do this, and when you do this, this will happen, and whatever, and so on. So he may have had those kind of instructions throughout. So I think he's going to be a painter, whether he wants to be or not professionally, but I think he's going to have some of those skills at this point in time. So then anyway, I went home, I got the pieces from the old one, brought them back, played around with it. Still didn't work right. It was not the way it needed to be. So I fiddled around with that light and played around with it a little bit more, but as far as I could go, and so on, left it alone. And Carter disappeared. Now this is true. He did disappear. And I couldn't figure out where he got to. I was looking all around and so on. I didn't see him. And after a while, he comes rolling in with this pressure washer behind him. And he looked semi-unhappy. And so on. So I thought, oh, he got the chore to do the pressure wash. Everybody wanted to pressure wash when we got there until they got a chance to do it, and then they weren't sure if that's what they wanted to do or whatever. So the way the thing worked out, there was a faucet on the front, and the receptacle to plug it in was in the back. So we had these cords and hoses running all over the place. So I thought, well, he started in the back and went around the corner as far as we could go, and then I helped him get around to the other side towards the front, and then we went around the front, then we had to go around to the back to get to the other side of the front and so on. But in spite of the fact whether he enjoyed what he was doing or not, he was very precise about what he was doing. He went over and I thought, well, he's done with that. Next thing I know, back he is going again and doing this and that and so on. So whether they enjoyed all the work that they did or not, I think they realized it was a reflection upon themselves and us and everything and from that standpoint. And they also wanted to make the homeowner proud and so on from that standpoint. So finally, I decided I was going to go to Cashman's and get some nuts to finish this thing off. So I brought the nuts back and everything, and I did it, and I had the light hanging. It just wasn't hanging the way I wanted it to because it's a flat thing, and it's got two screws on either side, and it dips down because it wasn't a flat surface it was on. So I said, well, it's up, it'll work, but I'm not satisfied with it. So our engineer decided that she had some sticks or hunks of wood or whatever in the trunk that maybe we could stick in behind. I said, but I don't know how we're going to keep them from falling out because of whenever it gets bumped or moved or whatever. So we got up there and started messing around with that. So I took the light off and I showed her what was wrong with it or why it was. And she said, well, this plate is here and then these two things come out towards us. What if we take that plate off and put it so they go to the back? The thing will push to the back and we screw in there and it'll be tight against the back. I said, okay, that works fine. So I started taking stuff off. She said, we don't have to take all that stuff off. We're just going to, I said, the wires go through that plate. We can't just twist the wires around it. So we took it all apart, put it back together, put the thing on, and it's too close to the back. The screws won't go in where they're at. So in the meantime, when I left Cashman's, there was a few raindrops on the windshield. By the time we got to that point, it got to be a few more raindrops where we were at. And so an umbrella comes out, and she's holding it over us while we're doing this. And I said, well, I'll be back just a minute. So I went to the car, got a rope, wrapped around the thing, wrapped around that. And she said, what are you doing? I said, we're coming back later. We ain't standing here in the rain doing this. So we took off, and we went to the dinner and so on. But let me go to Noah now. He's the the type of person. I never had any real association with Noah before. He had no idea who I was, just some crazy guy or something like that. I don't know how well he knew the other guys or whatever. But going down, he rode with me the first day. Going down, he was just talking my ear off. You can just imagine that, right? He was just talking my ear off. No, I spent the time going down. I explained what we were going to be doing and some of those different things and so on. And we had a reasonable conversation from that standpoint, but he wasn't overly talkative or whatever and so on. But by Friday, I think he was a little bit more. I think these guys sort of scared him because they were afraid of him. He beating up on them in basketball and things like that and so on. So, but yeah, he was, I think, a part of the group for sure by then. He was part of the group at the beginning and so on, but we weren't as knit together as we were by the end. So after the dinner was over, I decided at some point in time I'm going back and I'm finishing that light. So we went back, and I had 2 nuts left from the thing, so I put them on and pushed it out a little bit further so it went back not quite as far. Put the thing on, put the screws in. She went in and turned on the light, and it worked. And I'll be doggone, I didn't see that light once in any of these pictures. She's got pictures of that light not being there, but I don't see that light at all. But that was my project for the week, getting that light up there.
And it's true. I thought of that yesterday. Was putting pictures together. We don't have a picture of the light.
It should have cost her an arm and a leg to get me to put that up if she was paying me. But overall, I think it was a fun time. I think we saw what it's like, what it's going to be like when a couple years from me, and they got to come and help me do some of these different things and so on, because I'm not going to be able to do all those things and that sort of thing. But I think we were knit together. We were a group. Somebody needed something. We picked up on each other and that sort of thing. It takes a while till you feel the ins and the outs of each other and so on. But I think overall it was a good experience for everyone, and I think we learned a lot, some of which we don't realize at this point in time, probably, from that standpoint. But
Like how to cut lattice.
yeah, well, that was the engineer again.
We'll tell you that story another day. This was just a picture of us, some of us, at least most of us, near their trailer at the church that hosted us. But this is a picture of our homeowner. She's in the black tank top to the left there in the center next to Donnie and Ty. Her name is Shauna. And Shauna has quite a story. She was in a really bad car accident, what did she tell me, about 9 years ago. And she broke her back in 10 different places and got some brain damage. In fact, she has quite a bit of like spiderweb scars all over her forehead from the damage of her head being busted open. But she had some brain damage there that has affected her memory. She doesn't remember a lot of especially short-term things, but she gets very exhausted very quickly if she's just overstimulated, and she's just got to stop. So she was really excited this week. I think that was some of it. By Friday, she was hurting a lot just because she was so tired, but she was so excited to see everybody be there and just hear the laughter and the joy. She kept telling me over and over again how nice the place looked, but how well respected the boys were. They weren't on their phones. They weren't off wandering doing their own thing. They were always working. If they didn't have something to do, yes, they'd pick up the basketball for a while, but sometimes they just needed a break of some of that too. But the woman next to her is a woman named Paula. And Paula, Shauna calls her grandma, but she's not her grandmother. In fact, she's not a relative at all. She lived with a neighbor in the same mobile place that they live, in the court that they live. And it wasn't a good situation. So Shauna invited her 6 years ago to come stay with her, and she's been there since. Shauna also has a 15-year-old daughter, and we got to meet her boyfriend as well, who was there. And he has some back issues and things as well. So there were just a lot of situations that has hit all of these people that they weren't able to do a lot of the physical work. But in talking with them, in fact, the first day, John had said to me, our project manager, "Oh, you guys didn't get a lot of chance to talk with the homeowner." And I said, "Well, I got a couple different chances to talk with her a little bit at a time. And one of their main things is they want you to build relationships with these people and just give them the hope of Christ through that as well." And by the next morning, she came out and we were talking, and I guess whatever we talked about the day before, the Lord used and was enough for her to be comfortable with me. And as she's sharing with me some more of her struggles, she just started crying and just sharing over and over some of the things that are happening. And I gave her a hug, and John said to me later, he said, I was worried that you weren't getting the chance to talk with her, but I saw first thing in the morning, she cried, and you hugged her, and she cried even harder in your arms. And he was like, that was a testament to what you guys did the day before. And I said, yeah, and it wasn't just me. I was the only female, so of course she was talking to me about some of those struggles. But we got to talk with Paula too, and Paula experienced an awful lot of loss. She had a husband pass away, and she, not too awful long ago, she lost her son, she lost her daughter. It's been a lot of heartache for her as well, and just a lot of trials. Got a chance to talk to the neighbor who had the tree that Blake chopped half of it down for her. And he had stories too, and he had a lot of trials. He was an alcoholic at one time. He's been dry for 37 years and says he never has a desire to ever go back to that, but still lives with some of the consequences of those decisions, and has some physical ailments from some of that. His wife was in an abusive relationship, an abusive marriage before their marriage, and it just helped us to realize, I said it, I think that day, the second day, at our lunchtime under a tree. We found a nice shade tree where the breeze was always blowing, and it was a perfect place to have our picnic lunch. And I said, everybody has a story. Everybody has something behind their story, behind where we see what we see right now. And a lot of it is struggles and loss and hurt and pain. But at the same time, each one of them do have some grace and some healing in their stories as well. And that was the beautiful part of it. But it reminded me, so I did a devotion for the group on Friday morning, and I spoke about this, that we all have a story. We all have hurt and pain and loss behind what is here right now. And through all of that, we too have another part of our story to tell, which is the grace that Jesus Christ has given us. It is the freedom that Jesus has given us from that kind of world. And it did really bring a lot of hope to us in what we were doing and hearing their stories, but it brought a lot of hope to the homeowners as well. So on Friday night, they close by having a dinner where all of the homeowners are invited to come and share a meal with us. And it sounds like we're giving again to them, like we're providing a meal for you, come and have a free meal. But really the whole event is for them to give back to us. And all week long, I kept hearing Shauna say, I wish I could give something. I wish I could do something. I wish I could do this. I wish I could help in this kind of way with other people that I know need it. But she just physically and mentally cannot do that. But as I talked with her and heard her story, I kept saying, but you're serving doing that. She has a friend who's blind that she takes to get groceries and things. She did that one day this week. I'm like, you just served there. You just helped in that way. And she did over and over again. She's helping Paula by giving Paula a home. Just over and over and over again, I heard ways that she's serving too. But at the dinner, we heard a lot of the homeowners say that same thing. We wish we could do these things. But what they didn't realize was that their stories, when they shared it with us, just touched and moved us. And I think even to the youngest ones, probably even down to the 8-year-old, almost every one of them brought me to tears. The one I could see sitting at the table next to me really brought me to tears when she started crying. But some of the things they said, that it brought not only help for their homes, but it brought them joy in their heart. They heard the kids, it was a lot of youth there this week, and she heard them laughing, and she heard them having fun, and she heard them just having fellowship within each other and their groups as they were working, and that brought her joy. Someone said that they had a renewed faith in youth. Usually, they see neighborhoods of kids walking or doing things that they probably shouldn't be doing and just kind of hanging out and not really doing anything to help or benefit each other or anybody in the neighborhood. But here all these kids come. We probably had up to probably 25 youth in the neighborhood that we were working in, and they're walking the streets sharing tools and supplies back and forth. A couple of the neighbors that weren't a part of Servants were like, what are all these kids all of a sudden doing in our neighborhood? Is something bad going on? And they're like, no, it's this great thing. But they just said they had such a renewed faith in the youth. So I say that because I think that's important. A lot of times we think some of our youth aren't learning the right things, but you have youth who are learning the right things. In fact, it was a lot of them there this week. I would bet to say that probably 3/4 of the people there this week were youth, and we're all learning and working in that great way. But they also, one lady said, she told the kids that she is their extra grandma now. She expects them to stop by and visit because she just fell in love with all of those kids who served her. And one woman even said, she was telling her story, and she was telling all of the bad and the ugly parts of her story. She said when these kids came and worked for her, all of that was erased. even if it wasn't completely gone for the rest of her life, it was erased during the time that they were there because she had such joy from them. And again, hearing the laughter and the kids just working so well together. So I think that's the biggest thing that all of us can take away from, is that it's a renewed hope for everybody, not just for them. That is part of Servant's mission, is that we build relationships and that we renew hope. But it's a renewed hope for all of us too. One of the scriptures that was brought to my mind this weekend is from Ephesians 4. Let's back up here a bit to that. And it says, now these are the gifts Christ himself gave to us. So just think about that. These are gifts straight from Christ. Like, just to start off that way is important, I think, to understand. And he lists the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and the leaders. Their responsibility is to equip God's people to do his work and to build up the church, the body of Christ. And I just hung on that line for a while. Usually when I read this scripture, it's like, okay, yes, there are purposes in the church for pastors and apostles and evangelists and all of that. But it says that their job, their responsibility is to equip God's people, not just with anything, but with the ability then to do God's work, the ability to help, the ability to serve, the ability to talk about your story, be able to share your story with those people and to give hope as well. He goes on in verse 13, this will continue until we all come. So I guess the biggest question for all of us is just to be asking ourselves, how can we minister? How can we serve? How can we help somebody out? And so as we lead into communion here today, some of these thoughts came to my mind. And Jesus said that this is my command, love one another as I have loved you. So basically he's telling his disciples, which are us too, not just those original 12, that we are expected to learn and follow and be like him, right? And so we are supposed to love in the same way that he loved. How do we do that? That sounds like a really big job coming from Jesus, but it isn't that big. It isn't that hard, I should say. We can do that. And this is such a simple command that, even young children look at this command and say, oh, I get that. I'll love somebody else the way that I'm loved. It sounds so simple, but yet it's also so complex that as an adult, as mature Christian adults, we get stumped on it over and over again of how we can actually do that and maybe even failing at it. But as Jesus says, as I've washed your feet, I want you to wash someone else's feet. As I have fed you, feed others. As I have served you, serve others. As I have taught you, teach others. As I have loved you enough to die on the cross, by the way, that's how I want you to love others. Go ahead and give the sacrifice. Be a living sacrifice and serve and help others. Bree and I this morning. Bree, how old are you? 8 years old? She's sleeping. Oh, bless her heart. Is she 8, 9? Okay, 8. Well, and there was an 8-year-old down there this week serving. She just came up with a whole bunch of ideas of how we can serve this morning. We all can come up with a bunch of ideas how we can serve. We can serve and we can be like Jesus, that living sacrifice. If we understand the true meaning of Jesus' love, I don't think it takes a lot of thought to think of ways to serve. If we truly understand Jesus' love, it just pours out of us. It's just natural. It's the natural thing to do. You see something that needs done, do it. That's what these guys did. They heard instructions, they just took off, and they just did it. They saw something else needed done, something else needed weed whacked, something else needed power washed, whatever, they just did it. Blake ended up climbing on the roof to clean gutters and hosing down more than you probably thought you were going to. He just saw a need, and he just did it, right? We can do that too. And I think these guys, they may be on the younger side of this church, but we can learn an awful lot from just the example that they gave us this week too. So I think I had, that was a story I should probably share because that picture was in there, huh? These were some of our final pictures and results of the house. It is missing the porch light. You see that? Sorry, Jerry. But your lattice is up. And we did a lot of landscaping. We did a lot of rebuilding flower beds, making new flower beds, again, painting decks and porches. This was the biggest one that we did that Ty, Donnie, and I all teamed up together and did. But overall, it was amazing, and just so much got done in such a short period of time. Now, I will go back here and tell you what this picture means. So as we were painting that back deck, Ty realized that somebody doesn't like toads, and Jerry come across the house, and he said, hey, I found a new friend out in the flower bed that he's been digging that root out of, and he says that it was a toad. And I was like, oh, Carter doesn't like them. And Ty's like, yes. So Ty goes and gets the toad, comes back with it like squeezed, and I'm like, Ty, you don't know how to hold one of these things. You're squeezing everything out of it. And he did. He squeezed everything out of the toad. So we wiped the toad off in the grass, and like, you can't put it on Carter or give it to Carter like that. And so as Carter came around, he backed away quickly when he saw that Ty had a toad and said I don't want anything to do with that. But then I continued to try to teach Ty how to hold this poor little creature. And I had him in my hand, and I had a paint bucket in this hand. And I'm like, Ty, you just got to put him up to your chest and just hold him. Well, I kept kind of going to his chest with it. And as I'm doing this and he's standing next to me, the toad takes a leap. And where do you think he lands? He landed in my paint bucket. Thankfully, there was only about that much paint. But I'm panicking. I grab him out, throw the paint thing. Didn't care how much was in there being spilled, but thankfully none of it, I think, spilled. But the poor little guy was covered in paint except for his eyes. They were the only thing not covered in paint. So I'm like, get the Dawn dish soap. That's what they use in the commercials to wipe off the ducks. Get the hose. So thankfully just a hose took it all off, and he was healthy and he was fine. That was my picture of him afterwards. So that was my proof. He was alive and he was well, and he did okay. But we did have a lot of good times like that, and just a lot of laughter and good examples too of just fellowship. A lot of picking on each other, some wrestling, a lot of good basketball games, but overall, yeah, Donnie learned that he's not as fast as the boys, so his defense in basketball is just to wrap his arms around them and hang on tight. I guess it worked. It helped. But I think overall, not only were friendships just built and nourished, but overall there was just a sense of wonderful bonding together and serving and helping and knowing that a lot of memories were made this week. And so we're going to plan to go again next year. Hopefully all of these guys will go again next year. But we'd love to have more people with us. This is not just for kids. This is not just for youth. There are a group of adults, of men who are retired, who go to all 3 camps throughout the summer, I found out. And so they just come and they serve in whatever way they can. Everybody and everyone's welcome to go to this. I would love to see like 20, 30, 40, 50 people of our church just show up. Wouldn't that be awesome? And just serve in whatever ways we possibly can. I know it's during the week and it doesn't have to be every day, but I encourage you to come at least one day next week and experience, or next year. Next week, you want to go next week? And experience the joy of serving in this way and just bonding together. You're ready to go back, aren't you? Yeah. He was the one who I thought, doesn't he ever tire out? He just keeps going and going and going and going. He must get that from his father or mother. One of you two? Yeah. Oh, there you go, Matt. Take the credit for it. Take it. Does anyone have anything else you want to add? Okay. Well, then I'm going to let you guys go back to your seat unless you want to help serve communion. Donnie's out. Donnie's out.